Okay, I'm gonna not make this one too long because space is an issue. So I occasionally go into my local Chinese shop to buy noodles as a snack and occasionally green tea. The prices are reasonable and they have a good selection. But they've changed the decor, the interior of the shop. I'm not going to name the specific shop because my intention here isn't to sort of defame them, but just to sort of send out the an indication of what. Well, anyway, yeah. So they've changed the interior and they've redesigned the place a bit, and I've noticed they've started selling kind of like souvenirs and tack. And I couldn't help notice just it was busy, so I was waiting in the queue for a while. But I noticed in the background on one of the shelves they had mugs with Chairman Mao on them. Now, to be clear, this is a Chinese shop in the UK. This isn't in China, this is in the UK. And I left with a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, I feel uneasy about it when I see it in China, but you sort of expect it over there. And this isn't something that they've done before. This is a new thing. Now, I didn't say anything. What am I going to say? That, oh, why have you suddenly brought in this mass murdering dictator? But that's essentially what it is. I mean, it's their shop, it's their right, I suppose, but and they're not breaking any laws. But you can imagine if a German shop was selling Hitler memorabilia, you could just you can't imagine because it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. At least, not without a massive outcry on day one. Um, I find it sickening that this evil man, and I do regard Mao Zedong as an evil man, how 43 years on from his death, he's still lauded, not just within China, but apparently by the Chinese diaspora as well. That's not to say everyone worships him, but the cult is very much still there. I was hoping it was sort of phasing out. No, still very much there, and I find that very sad. I find it very sad that a mass murdering tyrant has been is sort of seen as a folk hero. My students, I mean, not that I ever got into politics in class, but occasionally students would say like he liberated China. And what did he do with that liberation? Liberating it from the old ways. But what did he do? He caused the worst famine in human history, untold misery, persecution, and suffering, and unimaginable turmoil. No leader in modern human history has caused so much misery in one country in peacetime as Mao Zedong. And it just makes me sick that this cult persists. It's often said that China doesn't think in terms of short time periods, i.e., decades, but in terms of centuries. So it may be that it will take decades more for China to truly be honest about this evil man's legacy and accept that whilst he was the founder of the People's Republic of China, um, that the ends didn't justify the means, that the massive scale suffering he caused for once needs to be fully acknowledged and not kind of this half hearted that, oh, well, he made a few mistakes. There's been trickles of truth in certain films like the Zhang Yimou film To Live, which was a very good film and it touched on the horrors of the Cultural Revolution. But, China has a very long way to go before being truly open about this. It's one of the most dishonest countries in the world in terms of self introspection. And it makes me very angry. I've never personally suffered from Maoism, but it makes me angry for the victims who did and for relatives who are still living today and they can't speak out against it because the same regime is in power. And a lot of Chinese are taken in by that personality cult, even today. True, it's more the older generation, but young people aren't immune from it. I mean, most young Chinese don't love Mao, but the very fact they don't see the evil side of him Like they see it as a sort of cool retro thing. Apparently, there's nightclubs in Shanghai and Beijing that have Mao themed nightclubs. So it's kind of it's not exactly worshipping him, but it's trivializing who he was. A mass murdering, egocentric tyrant. I mean, what he done was like Pol Pot times 20. So, I am going to think about whether I want to give this shop my patronage anymore. I'm not going to say anything because it would lead to an awkward situation. It could lead to misunderstandings. And, what am I going to say? Like, oh, I take issue with you putting this tyrant on your shelf. Then it would get into, they could accuse me of racism or some nonsense. Who knows? I don't want to do that because that's just something that could be misunderstood. But I will think about whether I want to. I mean, I've been going to that shop for years, and they have a good selection of stuff. But I'm shocked that's. I can't say I'm not overly surprised, but just disappointed that it's now going into the diaspora as well. Legally, like I say, they're not breaking any rules, but maybe it's one of those things. I think we just need to be more assertive. And in a democratic country, I don't think dictators should be praised. So maybe there should be a stipulation for Chinese businesses. You're welcome to do trade here. You're welcome to do business, but no Mao tack. But the government wouldn't touch that because they're politically correct, and they would be like, "Oh, but that might annoy the Chinese community." Well, frankly, if anyone in the Chinese community takes issue with that, then why are you living in a democracy if you don't respect democratic values? Um, guess they would argue, oh, free speech. But it makes me sick. I'll be quite honest. It sickens me to see that when this man caused so much misery, and the irony is his victims were almost entirely Chinese. That's why communist tyrants don't generally get the same taboo as fascist tyrants because they generally didn't invade other countries. I mean, certainly Tibet, Taiwan would have a different point of view on that, but Mao didn't start any world wars, so there isn't the same taboo around him. But I hope to God I live to see a day when China finally admits the truth about this man and ends the Mao cult. Unfortunately, I think it's a long way to come yet, but I hope one day that happens.